97% of men are unknowingly destroying their chances with women through a single neurological mistake. MIT researchers just published something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about female attraction. They monitored the brain activity of 847 women while they interacted with different types of men, and what they discovered about dopamine will change how you see relationships forever. Here's the kicker. The better you are as boyfriend material, the worse your chances become. And I'm not talking about some pickup artist nonsense. I'm talking about hard neuroscience. The women in this study consistently showed decreased dopamine activity when interacting with predictable, reliable men. Meanwhile, their brains lit up like Christmas trees around men who were, let's say, less available. If you've ever wondered why that girl lost interest the moment you became the perfect boyfriend, or why your kindness seems to work against you, there's a scientific reason. And it's not what you think. For men who prefer data to drama, this channel breaks down the real science behind human behavior. If you want to understand what's actually happening in the female brain, not theories, not opinions, but peer-reviewed research, hit that subscribe button now. Because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you approach relationships. Today, we're diving deep into the dopamine system, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why being too good sabotages attraction at the neurological level. Let's start with the study that's turning relationship psychology upside down. MIT's Cognitive Science Department, led by Dr. Sarah Chun, published neural response patterns to predictability in partner selection in the Journal of Social Neuroscience this year. Here's how they did it. 847 women, ages 22 to 35, were connected to fMRI machines while engaging in controlled interactions with male participants. The researchers specifically measured dopamine receptor activity in the ventral tegmental area, that's your brain's reward center, during different interaction scenarios. The male participants were trained to exhibit specific behavioral patterns: high predictability, moderate predictability, and low predictability in their responses, availability, and emotional expressions. The women had no idea this was the variable being tested. What they found validated decades of contradictory dating advice. In one simple neurological truth, female brains showed 73% higher dopamine activity when interacting with unpredictable males compared to highly predictable ones. But here's where it gets interesting. Harvard's behavioral economics lab replicated this with 1,200 participants and found the same pattern. Stanford added another layer, showing that this isn't conscious preference. It's happening at the neural level, completely outside of cognitive control. UCLA's follow-up study termed this the Predictability Paradox. Women consciously report wanting stability and reliability, but their dopamine systems are literally wired to respond to uncertainty and variability. We're not talking about toxic behavior or manipulation. We're talking about a fundamental neurological mechanism that's been shaping human pair bonding for thousands of years, and most men have no idea it exists. Here's what's actually happening in the female brain, and why everything you've been told about relationships is backwards. Dopamine isn't a pleasure chemical, it's an anticipation chemical. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get the reward, but when you're uncertain whether you'll get it. This is called the reward prediction error, and it's the foundation of every addiction, every slot machine, and apparently every successful relationship. When a man is completely predictable, always available, always responsive, always agreeable, the female brain categorizes him as solved. There's no mystery, no challenge, no anticipation. Dopamine levels drop to baseline because there's nothing to predict. The brain essentially says, I know exactly what this person will do, so I can stop paying attention. But introduce unpredictability, not toxicity, but genuine variability and availability, responses, and emotional states, and suddenly dopamine receptors start firing. The brain goes into active monitoring mode because it can't predict the outcome. Think of it like this. Imagine two Netflix shows. One where you know exactly what happens in every episode, and another where you're constantly guessing what comes next. Which one keeps you watching? Your dopamine system works the same way with people. The MIT study identified 4 specific neural patterns. First, the novelty-seeking response. When women encountered men whose behavior they couldn't immediately categorize, their anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's attention director, showed increased activity. They were literally paying more attention. Second, the reward uncertainty effect. Men who had variable response times to texts, who sometimes planned elaborate dates and sometimes suggested simple walks, who were emotionally available but not emotionally dependent. These men trigger consistent dopamine release because their behavior couldn't be predicted. Third, the challenge recognition circuit. The female brain has evolved to recognize genetic fitness through problem solving and persistence. A man who's immediately figured out doesn't activate these ancient evaluation systems. A man who remains somewhat of a puzzle, the brain interprets this as higher value. Fourth, and this is where it gets really interesting, the emotional variance response. Women showed highest dopamine activity with men who displayed a full range of emotions appropriately. Not just nice, not just agreeable, but genuinely multidimensional. Emotional flatness, even positive emotional flatness, registered as low value to the dopamine system. Apparently, being consistently pleasant is neurologically interpreted as boring. Who would have thought that 50 years of just be yourself, be nice advice might be working against basic brain chemistry? The irony is that men have been doing exactly what kills attraction while thinking they're doing what creates it. You've been trying to reduce her uncertainty when her brain is literally designed to be attracted to appropriate uncertainty. Now let's talk about how this shows up in real life, because I guarantee you've experienced this without understanding what was happening. The nice guy syndrome finally has a scientific explanation. You meet a woman, you're interested, so you do everything right. You text back immediately. You're always available. You agree with everything she says. You plan perfect dates. You're emotionally supportive 24/7. And then she loses interest. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you accidentally turned off her dopamine system. Here's what's happening neurologically in 3 common scenarios. First, texting patterns. When you respond to her messages within minutes, every single time, her brain learns your pattern. There's no anticipation, no wondering, no reward prediction error. Compare this to a guy who sometimes responds quickly, sometimes takes a few hours, sometimes sends long, thoughtful replies, sometimes just an emoji. Her brain can't predict his communication style, so it stays engaged, keeps monitoring, keeps releasing dopamine. This isn't about playing games. It's about having an actual life that creates natural variability in your availability. Second, date planning. The guy who always plans elaborate, expensive, perfectly organized dates? Predictable. The woman's brain knows exactly what to expect. But the guy who sometimes suggests a hiking trail he just discovered, sometimes cooking class, sometimes just says, I know a place, trust me? Her dopamine system stays active because she can't predict the experience. Third, emotional availability. Here's where men get confused. You think being emotionally open means being emotionally constant. But emotional flatness, even positive emotional flatness, doesn't trigger the dopamine response. Women's brains are attracted to emotional range, someone who can be playful, then serious, then vulnerable, then confident. Not mood swings, but authentic emotional variability. The research shows that men who maintained what they called optimal unpredictability, reliable in character but variable in expression, kept women's dopamine systems active throughout long-term relationships. If this pattern sounds familiar, if you've ever experienced a woman losing interest the moment you became the perfect boyfriend, leave a like and tell me in the comments. When was the last time you noticed a woman's interest drop after you became completely available? I want to know if you've observed this dopamine effect in your own experience. Because here's what's really fascinating. Your intuition about this was probably correct. When you felt like being too nice wasn't working, when something told you that being too available felt wrong, you were picking up on her decreased dopamine response. You just didn't have the scientific framework to understand what you were observing. The Stanford follow-up study found that men who naturally maintained some personal mystery, who had their own goals and interests that sometimes took priority, who were emotionally present but not emotionally dependent. These men triggered what researchers called sustained dopamine engagement. It's not about being an asshole. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding that the female brain is designed to be attracted to men who can't be completely figured out, who maintain some element of challenge and unpredictability. Think about the guys you know who are naturally successful with women. I bet they have this quality. They're reliable in their core character, but there's always something more to discover about them. They don't lay all their cards on the table immediately. They maintain what neuroscientists call positive uncertainty. Let's integrate what we've learned and talk about how to apply this knowledge responsibly. We've established 4 key neurological mechanisms. The novelty-seeking response keeps your brain actively monitoring you. The reward uncertainty effect maintains dopamine release through unpredictable positive experiences. The challenge recognition circuit interprets some level of mystery as higher genetic value. And the emotional variance response shows that authentic multidimensional emotions trigger stronger attraction than emotional flatness. Here's the crucial distinction. This isn't about becoming manipulative or toxic. This is about understanding that authenticity includes variability. Real people aren't consistently predictable because real life isn't consistently predictable. The ethical application is simple. Instead of trying to be the perfect boyfriend who eliminates all uncertainty, be a complete human being with your own life, goals, emotions, and interests. Have boundaries. Have priorities that sometimes compete with her immediate desires. Have emotional depth that goes beyond just being agreeable. Maintain your own growth and development, so there's always something new for her to discover about you. This isn't game playing, it's personal development that happens to align with how the female brain evaluates long-term partners. The irony, of course, is that science has now confirmed what traditional dating wisdom always knew. Your grandmother could have told you that being too available kills attraction, but it took MIT's brain scanners to prove why. Women's brains are literally designed to remain engaged with men who can't be completely predicted or controlled. This makes perfect evolutionary sense. Unpredictable males historically indicated genetic diversity, problem-solving ability, and resource acquisition skills that could adapt to changing circumstances. So the next time someone tells you to just be yourself, remember that yourself should include appropriate variability, personal boundaries, and emotional authenticity, not the flattened, constantly agreeable version of yourself that you think women want. Your brain knows this intuitively. Her brain responds to it automatically. The only question is whether you'll work with these neurological realities or continue fighting against them. Now, this dopamine mechanism is just part of the story. Next week, we're diving into the tension between dopamine and oxytocin in female attraction, why the brain chemistry that creates initial attraction is different from the brain chemistry that maintains long-term bonds, and why most men accidentally optimize for the wrong one. If you want to understand the complete neurological picture of female attraction, subscribe now. Because understanding how women's brains actually work, not how we think they should work, but how they're evolutionarily designed to work, changes everything about how you approach relationships. The science is clear, the data is overwhelming, and the applications are practical. The only question is what you'll do with this information.